Hey guys, so a few days ago, I did my Mother's Day video honoring my late mother. I shared the story of the heroic action that she selflessly took to ensure that she wasn't going to be cornered by the doctors that wanted to murder me in the womb. And last year, I made a Mother's Day video trying to combine Mother's Day with Mental Health Awareness Month, because the month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I shared the story of my mom's lifelong journey with mental health and how it eventually led her back in November of 2024 to make the tragic decision of committing suicide. And this time, obviously, since I didn't include that aspect in my Mother's Day video a few days ago, I want to include that in this video. And this time I'm going to share a little bit more about my journey with mental health, and I'm going to combine that with how my autism played an effect on my mental health. You guys may not know this, but I do have a form of autism. And when I was little, it was a very low functioning form of autism. I think up until I was 14, cognitively, I was 4 years or so behind my actual age. And then around 14, a miracle of God happened and my brain finally caught up with my body, and now I have high functioning autism. But when it was low functioning, I dealt with a lot of difficulties, not just academically in school, but also it affected how my mental health was able to get a grip on me in ways I wish it never had. And in my first book, The Gospel and Autism, which is a book about my journey with autism and how it affected me being a Christian, as well as a lot of the mental health struggles I faced because of my autism. If you guys want to check this book out, I'll leave a link to where you can purchase it down below. It'll be a Linktree link, and if you click that, it'll take you to, you'll see, I think there's a tab on my Linktree that says read my books, and you'll find this and my young adult novel that I wrote a couple years ago. But in this book, I did several chapters about essentially my journey with my autism from the time I was diagnosed at 4 years old up to my senior year in high school. And somewhere in the middle of that, which is what I'm about to read here, was my years in elementary school, where things kind of took a turn for the worst. I'm going to read the end of this chapter where I wrote about the events that eventually led up to my first suicide attempt when I was 8 years old. The beginning of my second year of kindergarten wasn't much better. It was literally just a repeat of the previous year, and even though it was hard to pay attention, I still knew what everything was. The only reason they held me back besides my autism was the fact that I didn't have the best handwriting, which makes no sense to me because most 5 to 6 year olds don't have the best handwriting. The bullying didn't ease up either. There was this one particular kid, my childhood tormentor, who made me his punching bag from kindergarten all the way to 5th grade. He knew my flaws, fears, and everything else negative about me. He took all that to his advantage and bullied me horrifically, especially when fire drills would happen. But it didn't stop there. This kid would physically and verbally abuse me. He would make fun of me and my family any way he could. I distinctly remember him once saying, "Your mom is mean, your dad is ugly, and your grandparents are old creeps just like you." He was not a friendly camper. And because of my autism, I would always fight back with remarks that would get me into trouble. I would throw punches, luckily I always missed, talk back to people, and disobey direct orders from teachers. It was almost impossible for me to ignore anything thrown at me, and that's literally all I was told to do when someone did something to me. No one understood that for someone in my condition, ignoring and brushing it off was just not a capability. It was also early that school year when my mom came home one evening to tell me she was leaving. This wasn't at all helpful. It made me even more unable to focus in class and at home. Fast forward to 2nd grade, my grades were still steadily declining. I had been still unable to pay close attention because of my phonophobia, and the bullying never stopped. It was a nightmare. I almost never could complete the full piles of schoolwork and the homework, which I was forced against my will to complete, though I'd get a splitting headache every day. My family would always be mad at me because they didn't understand. I was often put in the timeout chair or sent to the corner for not doing homework, and the simple truth is, I couldn't. I did not have the cognitive capacity at that time with everything going on. My parents had been divorced, my phonophobia was at an all-time high, my peers all picked on me, most of my teachers didn't care at all, and my family and I were not getting along in the slightest. Later on in the school year, I was having a really bad day. With everything that had happened over the last few years, I had become severely depressed. I was coming home from school in tears every day, but I would try to fake being happy so my family wouldn't worry. Nothing good was happening in my life. That day, I was out at recess, minding my own business, when that one kid, my childhood tormentor, started chasing me around the playground. He eventually caught up with me and shoved me into a tree, almost cutting up half my face. My autism kicked in with my fight or flight response, and I punched him in the chest. He then proceeded to run towards the teachers. At that moment, I was just done. I was done with everything. My peers all hated me. I was constantly afraid, and most of my teachers didn't care about my autism or anything for that matter. My family and I could not see eye to eye, and I was the one paying for everything. I just couldn't take it anymore. I was hopeless, depressed, and alone. So without any hesitation, it was that moment I attempted to take my life. Now let me preface a few more things. Phonophobia is the fear of sudden loud sounds. And there's a whole nother God story behind this one. But the thing that I was made fun of for the most and had me struggling so much in grade school, particularly because it was a public school and they never followed my IEP, was when we had a fire drill every month. I would usually be sitting there in class like this, trying to look like I was chilling, but really I was trying to keep my ears covered so the fire alarm didn't scare me. And at the same time, everything that had been going on starting around that first year of kindergarten was constantly on a loop in my head, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it was driving me off the rails. And I wasn't talking to anybody about it. I didn't think anyone would believe me. The teachers would never believe me when I was trying to get away from my childhood tormentor. So why would I think my parents or my family would believe me if I was struggling with something like that? And why would any of the other adults believe me? And it literally got to a point where I thought, clearly no one's ever going to believe me, and I feel like I'm just a burden to everyone who knows me. I'm going to do them all a favor and just disappear. And I made that split-second decision right after I had gotten away from my childhood tormentor when he cornered me under that pine tree. He caught up to me, turned me around, pushed me into the tree, and I elbowed him to get him off, and still being in fight or flight mode, I turned back around and punched him in the chest. He took that as an opportunity, because he knew the teachers would never believe I was doing it in self-defense, to get me in trouble. And so he goes to the teachers, and at that moment, I'm thinking, there we go again. I'm just going to make more people upset now. And that's when I had that split-second thought, and I pulled a piece of bark off of that pine tree. I sharpened it with a little rock that was there by the retention pond, and I was ready to start cutting my scalp open. And by the grace of God, the teacher that my childhood tormentor went to tell on me on, right before I could start cutting, grabbed my arm and stopped me. And she took me to the principal's office, and she then stepped aside to call my dad. He came and picked me up, and I'm not going to go into a whole bunch more detail, but the administration there were really trying to convince him that I was faking it. It was the first time I realized my dad cared about me more than I realized, and he, similar to my mom did to the doctor that tried to get her to abort me, he spat in the faces of the administration, figuratively in this case, and said, "I'm taking my son and getting him help." I apologize for that hiccup. I had a call come in that I had to take. So my dad, as I said, told the administration to quit their bad-mouthing and to let him take me out of there and get me help. And that's exactly what happened. He, within a couple days, I think he kept me out of school the rest of that week. And by the end of that week, I started going to therapy on a regular basis. I think for several years, I was seeing a therapist weekly. And that continued pretty much until I moved here. And I still go to therapy now, but I'm only going once a month at this point because I've made so much progress in my mental health journey that I haven't needed as much therapy that I used to need. Thank God for that. And the reason I bring all this up is because mental health is a serious thing. I lost my mom to suicide because of unmanaged mental health. I have attempted suicide myself because of unmanaged mental health. Having autism made it even harder. Still does to this day make it harder, even though I'm high functioning now. Please take your mental health seriously. You only get one life on this earth, and it would suck for you to not enjoy fulfilling the purpose that God has for you while you're on this earth because of trauma and bad mental health. I allowed that to happen to me most of my childhood, and I allowed it to continue up until I think I was 20, when I finally started taking the steps I should have taken all those other years to start not just healing, but keeping my brain health better overall. And I don't just mean cognitively, I mean physically. I mean, I was eating, in the years I was the most depressed, I would overeat everything. I would overeat on sweets, fried food, potato chips, Doritos. They're both potato chips, but you get the point. I eventually got to a point where I was almost 300 pounds. I think I maxed out at 295. And when I finally started taking better care of my body, I lost, I think, 80 of those pounds. And because my body is so much healthier physically now, my brain health is a lot better. And so on top of healing from my trauma, I'm now able to enjoy life more so than I did because my depression and my anxiety and my PTSD does not have the hold on me that it did when I was little and in the late teens and age 20. It is worth it to fight it. I know you probably don't want to if you're struggling. It may seem completely pointless. I had moments like that too, where it felt like I was doing it for nothing. God showed me day in and day out just what I was fighting for. And if I had been successful with that attempt, or my second attempt later on in life, I would have missed so much. I would have missed getting to live in the beautiful country of North Georgia. I would have missed meeting and marrying my beautiful wife and having the adorable dog that we have, and to be in a career field that is a God story in and of itself. I mentioned in that chapter that I was made fun of a lot for fire drills, phonophobia, as I mentioned in the book. It's the fear of sudden loud sounds. And obviously the main trigger for that for me as a kid was when the fire alarm would sound. And like I said, God's story that needs to be put in a completely different video for full detail. But the job I work now is a job if I have to do a 9 to 5 the rest of my life, I can't see myself doing anything else. And I'm a fire alarm system inspector. I work now and make a living with the very things that tormented me as a kid. That right there is a God story. I would have missed that had I succeeded in my suicide attempt. I would have missed a lot. I could not be more blessed to still be alive and fulfilling the purpose God has for my life and not being like my mother. And that's what I implore all of you to do. Do not be like my mother. Part of me is going to say, don't be like me either. Do better than me. And I think by the grace of God, I've done very well for myself. Please take your mental health seriously. And if you know someone who's struggling with mental health problems, encourage them to take it seriously. You might save their life. Have a good one.